everyone. Thank you for joining in person and virtual. What? Can you give me like an action?
Turn your mic
Mic on.
Turn it on.
I turned it on. It's on. Jane, it's on? Okay. Okay. All right. Take two. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining in person and online. This is a very special conversation between two legends. I am your artistic director of your New York Piano Society. My name is Natasha Poremsky, and we'll be hosting this event here at Klavierhaus, a generous hosting of Sujatri Reisinger, who is the founder and the owner of Klavierhaus, which restores pianos to their absolute glorious extra potential. And this is Dr. Daniel Kuhn. He is the world premier neuropsychiatrist. He developed the Kuhn method. He has helped so many people in all walks of life, artists, performers, people in sports, people who have been in the army, veterans.
Right.
And in some ways, these men, I think, they have something quite in common in that they solve the traumas of, in Dr. Kuhn's case, of people and those obstacles, and in Sujatri's case, he brings the essence and the soul of the piano back. So I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to them. So, and please be prepared to ask questions. Don't be shy. I'll be monitoring the questions on the phone, and anybody here in the studio has questions, feel free. So take it away. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. So I was asked actually to interview Sujatri, and that's a very special kind of encounter for me. We talked a little bit before, so I have a sense of your unique approach to the piano and to life, actually. Coming from a long experience of meditation and having a relationship with the concept of silence.
Yeah.
And that you find to be central to your life, okay? And that's a theme that accompanies you for many years.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
From childhood, actually, from the time you remember.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now, coming out of the subject of silence, how do you arrive to meet the piano in your life? When was a time that the piano has appeared in your life?
That was about 40 years ago. A friend of mine created a piano company. Actually, I had a spiritual teacher for 30 years, and I lived as a monk, but worked and acted in the world. Like, I have a lot. I mean, probably 100 years ago, I would have been in Tibet somewhere in a cave.
Right.
So I think that's pretty much how I live inside. But we have this new situation. So I'm in the middle of New York, and I have this place here. And so, of course, I wanted to find my cave within all these conditions. And my teacher said to create this to serve humanity. So it's not to make money or all that stuff, serve humanity. And that's very natural for me. Again, I was born like that. It's not something I do. But it very nicely came together. And then what is very interesting is that what I like to do is I poke silence. I mean, all the time, even if I'm talking inside, it's so solid that it's more solid than the physical that I've probably in many years of this. But So I would do my thing, I would meditate at home, I would sort out my emotions and just come to a peaceful space, and that would give me energy for the day, and I would leave smiling, and I would never leave unless I smile. That's like, I cannot go on the street. So I was doing that, and I was working on the piano. And then it took 20 some years that I realized that my real passion is silence, not what I do. And it's like, why do I have to work with sound when I really want to, talk about it or whatever? And then I started putting the two together, and I realized that musicians don't know silence. They know sound. And the whole Western culture has the emphasis on sound and sound wave and composers and history and all that stuff. But I don't want to get into very deep, but every concert is measured by how long the silence is at the end of it. Every performance, which show, and also 3,000 people are staying in, like this is why we really came, but we can't say anything about it. So nobody remembers. They will remember the composer or the performer and the evening, but they won't remember because there is nothing to remember in that. So then I started talking to pianists and asking questions, very challenging questions, for me very innocent. And then I think it inspired many pianists throughout the decades, the way I'm seeing it from the point of silence. And the benefit for me, I have an engineering background, right? So I can make this, that's given. But if I imagine this makes sound, and if I'm listening from silence, I mean, I have no disturbing thoughts, emotion, plans, hopes, none of that. I can just look at it as sound wave, and it shows itself what it is. So I can see the color, the dynamic, all that becomes an object for me. And I have many tricks, techniques, how to bring them left and right. That's the voicing and all that stuff. But I asked Richard Goodwin, I said, why, if pianists have names for color, because I do colors, I create colors. I could create so many hundreds of colors, but there are no names for them. So nobody asked for it. Yeah. And so you would say, clear, bright, sweet, honey, you have 10 of these, but it's like, whoa. And so there's a big limitation, and I thought, but I'm not going to do it, but maybe you can enforce the idea that we should, I think the brain, or we are, as human beings, we are developed to remember colors. Mm-hmm. Like I don't remember sound. I work with sound. I don't remember. Where is it? So I get rid of all the ones that are not. And then I bump into one, and then I know what to do. So I have the technique, and so therefore a pianist also, because I work with piano, they can't remember. So if you have an even piano, they are very happy because they learn to adopt to anything, Mm-hmm. And so because of this adaptation, they stop searching or complaining, and so poor pianists have to play on anything.
Searching for what? I think that every pianist actually try to better understand what he wants to accomplish, and to get better to an ideal of sound or ideal of expression of a line. And I agree with you that it is created in context of space. And silence relates to space. Yeah. And we cannot talk about silence just for what it is. It is actually the space into which we are creating. And I would say, from my point of view, and what I work, and that relates to what you say, I try to bring people to the sense of the beingness. And what is beingness but to be in space? And when I ask a person to repeat many times the word I am, after a while, the person reached a point that he suddenly reached a point of softness and silence, and he realized that he exists, because usually people are not so aware of being. So how to bring the beingness of the person and to create from that. I heard Glenn Gould recording of a studio recording of the Goldberg variation, very unusual, and I was totally amazed of how he connected with the sound and what he produced. And really, it starts with the aria, which is very simple, but every sound was like penetrating you, and you felt that he was, and the force of the sound was actually energized by the being.
Yeah.
And and probably that's what you mean by silence.
Yeah.
That the being is there, and that connect with the sound. It's a point of emanation that is not material. It's not material. It's not matter. It's space.
Yeah, if we give that terms, yes.
So it's more like the beingness related to space.
No, and this should be taught in school. I mean, for musicians, if they spend decades on refining their skill, I don't know if I say something wrong, but imitating, of the past and be measured and judged by the past. And the musicians have a chance to do exactly this, and because they could be the knowers of sound. But for that, you have to know silence as a phenomenon, or to be aware of space. We are not aware of space and how important space is. And silence is made from the same quality, and the musician's tool is sound and silence. But because sound depends on silence as a physical phenomenon, you need energy to upkeep sound wave. You don't need anything, you can do anything with that. So therefore, sound depends on silence. So why don't we spend 10 years on figuring out what silence is before we place a sound wave on it with that conscious awareness?
How long does it take to reach awareness of something? That's very individual. Some people will never reach it, some people have it. And so I don't think it's a matter of practicing in order to get to silence. Well, maybe there's to be some intention to find yourself in space or in silence. But to say that you have to work on that, that becomes physical.
Yeah. But what you have said just before, and that being is the one empowering sound music, I think everybody understood in a second. Oh, that's how it is. I don't need to say anything, because what you just said, everybody could understand. Not very difficult, and that should be taught in school, in music school. That sounds it's very good. And then we can talk about, we can talk about music, because, I mean, again, I probably will be killed for this, but many times in our heated debate with musicians, pianists, and I come to a point that I don't like music. And then everybody's like, I get everybody's attention, that's what I want. And I would say it was not born yet. What the real potential be in music, or in the discipline of silence, or the wisdom of silence and sound, is universal potentially. And that's all it takes, this awareness of space. How difficult is it? Do we have space here between us? We do. This is how easy to understand that space.
But I think that we create a space. I think that a performer, when he gets on stage and he's in an auditorium, he has to conceive in his mind the space of the auditorium. He's playing into an audience in a space, and he has to intend that his sound will get there. So he's not playing to himself, and they listen, and he doesn't care about the space. He's playing into a space. And he has to reach every point in the space, but also every viewpoint of each person.
Yeah.
and connect with them.
Yeah.
So basically it's really connecting with everybody, but not physically. It's really by intention. The intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a willing teacher anywhere. I went to I was invited to the Liszt Academy by the dean because he heard me talking. And he said, okay, you come and talk to the piano students, the best ones. So I have no subject really. I mean, I've been poking silence for 45 years and there's not much I can say. But I can say a lot what is not silence and what are the danger of that, and I can speak a lot. So I went in the class really not knowing music or had no idea what I was going to say. But in about, I would say, 5 minutes there was a revolt. Because I challenged the question, or you know, the kids were saying things, and I asked questions, and they could see that the answer was not correct because either they was borrowed idea, imposed idea, they made it up and all that, and it was on religion, God, on infinity, on music, all that stuff. I would say within 20 minutes, all that was out the window. So I had a group of beautiful kids, like they were before they had all these impositions, and they were like this, and then you saw the intelligence in their eye, and they started coming up their own answer for the same or the same subjects, because it's not, the subjects are very, very easy to comprehend once you have you have space and silence inside, because everything is self-evident. Nothing needs really an explanation. We can have an explanation for practical purposes to we make a cup and all that stuff, but it doesn't need any explanation. And all this doesn't need any explanation. So anyway, that was a wonderful experience. The teacher also forgot about himself, and he was also, which was great. Anyway, and then I told him, please initiate compulsory silent teaching in music school. Not to meditate, not this spiritual stuff, but really to come up more the way you said, how beneficial it is to have that awareness of silence.
Yeah.
So if the kid understands that why should he run to the silent concert? I don't know what that is, but class, because he could stay in silence right through the performance and managing sound waves with an intent. I don't know the word you said, with an intention.
Intention.
That's art. I mean, he's like a doctor. He predicts of the emotions, the feelings, and then also the color of the sun. And that would be, that's artistry. That is true.
Okay, but there's so much work to be put into preparation of a piece before it's presented.
Yeah.
And the process is not just silence, it is intellectual. And it is a matter of understanding ideas, musical ideas, and not just notes and how they sound, but they have meaning, but the connection between them is like words, and they project images, etc. So, it's basically it's a creative process of thinking and conclusion of all the hard work that was done to learn and to practice and to eliminate the unnecessary.
Yeah.
You can say, similar to sculpture, Michelangelo take a piece of a huge rock, and he carves it, and he's left with a sculpture of David.
Yeah.
Okay, and you look at David, you look silently at David, and you are totally amazed by the beauty and by the meaning and by the motion. You have I would say, silent experience, timeless.
Yes,
I saw
timeless,
I saw that sculpture, and I was at awe about that, and it's like I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Okay, now good performance. Also, you fall in love with the performance if it is aesthetically complete. But that experience is really probably what connects with silence. It is the aesthetic feelings that you have, but there's so much. We cannot ignore the physical universe.
No.
We live in the physical universe, and it is
God.
a struggle. We struggle with the piano, we struggle with the notes, with knowledge of style, okay, and trying to put our personal point of view into that. And our personal point of view is also silence. We come from silence.
Yeah.
That's where the being is, okay? So it's what we are talking about. I don't know if you practice silence like long-term practice in classes, you know, because that seemed to me too mechanical.
I was
you know?
I was born with this.
Right.
I'm not. You can't do that. This is my first. I mean, I went to the Liszt Academy just
Yes.
with friends and stuff, but I never. There is so much for me to say because it's long time. It's 45 years. And I'm very intense. So there is, we could say conclusions, wisdom, whatever. But none of those are silence. Those are tools like you have that is, I can talk about I can talk about all the traps that, that we need to identify that is living in our awareness, but it lives like it as part of our being, but it's not. It clings on, and it needs to be identified. And if we are used to, and if you are used to an experience, let's say just a shoulder pain, and then there's a memory of tennis. So there is a memory, because I did that. I'm a guy who played tennis some time ago, and I'm injured, and I'm walking with this, and I don't want it. So I'm walking around constantly aware because I don't want it. So it is quite easy to accept this experience, for example. Yes, it hurts. And then you look at it, how does it look like? You know, how does this pain, this discomfort look like? And then you won't believe this, but this is something you could walk for 5 years. But once you turn to it and you look at it, what it is, how does it pulsate, no? It disappears in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes. Am I right?
Yeah.
So
can I give an example of my
yeah,
area?
please.
As I'm a psychiatrist, just yesterday I interviewed a lady for the first time, and she gave me right away stories that is so charged with trauma, of being molested at age 16, being married badly to someone who is abusing her, having a mother who is dominant and abusive to her, and being alcoholic, and etc., etc. And the story is long, rich like that, and litigation, and financial situation, and etc. Lost soul in a way, but struggling, very. She's an actress, she writes books, she was in a psychiatric institution for a week because of panic, and she became a psychotherapist in that institution. So she studies, she's very capable apparently. Okay, anyhow, I hear this story, and you can spend hours listening to it, trying to put it all together, all the history. Well, I took a different tack. I asked her to just repeat, I am. So we started. It lasted about 15 minutes. I asked her to say, I am, I acknowledge, repeat, I am, good. She became stronger and stronger into like very solid statement. And after, let's say, and I can sense the energy, the charge that is behind the word, because if she will say, I am, it doesn't mean anything, so I will sense it. There's some energy there. So eventually she reached a point that she started to soften up, and she will say, instead of I am, something happened, and I feel like it's like treading water, nothing. Okay, I said, what's happening? And she said, I found myself. That's what she said. I found myself. I'm connected. And the change was so dramatic. Okay, now basically, what I was doing is connecting with that part of her that is the source point, but it got lost in the noise, hypnotized by the trauma. And she identified with the trauma this, trauma that, etc. She doesn't see himself. She was lost, okay? Suddenly she finds the eye. And when the eye is free and operating, the eye can do anything. Erase all those things.
That's true.
You know? So, and she did it. And one session, and one section of session was so dramatic. The whole idea was really to find the source point, which is just a viewpoint in space, the eye. It's not a material thing. It's not charge. It's not trauma. It's not information. It is a source, you know? And I think that I connect it with the concept of space because the eye is basically viewpoint in space.
Yep.
And when you connect with space, you still maintain your point of view.
Yeah, you can, yes.
Right?
Yeah, you have the choice to be both.
Yes,
and
so
that's
you look at it.
That's what missing
look.
from the...
But I think what you achieve is really separating yourself from the mental mechanism, identities, memories, etc. They don't own you now.
Yeah.
You are above it, and you can now organize it.
Yeah, and they are not dangerous anymore because you are bigger than them.
Yes.
When you are the same, you fight on the same level and you lose because they are not real, really. They are just emotions and thoughts and stuff. They are not real, so there is no real weapon to beat them, but except when. And the question, why can we grow that big, like science? Why can we comprehend? If it was foreign to us, how can we comprehend? How can we talk about it? And saying,
yeah, well, I
don't need an answer. I'm just saying,
it's a saga for everyone to go by himself and find out.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a teacher that will help you, and will ask you to change your point of view, to look at what you're doing, reflect on it, and not to be just in the mechanic. There are some people that are here playing, and in our time, people try to play Bach faster. Everything is faster.
Yeah.
Baroque, fast and noisy. That is exciting, you know. But the music is getting lost in it, in the details. And I'm because I have a live track. I remember how people played Bach in the 50s.
Yeah.
In the 40s, for different tradition, and it was slower, but it was much more meaningful for me. Okay, I'm not against playing fast. That's not the issue. The issue is connection with what you do, and also being aware of the style, the periodic style. I don't think the people played in the Baroque with that kind of fanfare, you know. Okay, that's what I want to say.
That's good. Just to mention something that obviously we come from a very different direction, and one of the greatest Indian spiritual master, I mean really the greatest that is recognized, is Ramana Maharishi, and he's first of all, he was just living in a mountain, and then people came from the village and wanted to learn. Then they built a shed for him, and he didn't want any of this, but people needed it, so they created it. And then he would be just sitting in silence. And then many times people come for a bit of spiritual question, deep questions, and he would be just sitting, and that's his answer. And then these people, the students, they claim themselves to be students. He didn't have any, but. So, and they pushed him, we need, people are hungry, they give something. And he said, then he started doing the Who Am I? It's very, very, it's a legendary
Statement?
Yeah. So that is like, if you look into this, it's, so I'm just saying that that's the pinnacle of all the spiritual master. And that was, when you told me on the phone, I said, okay, we meet. Because that really is a magic, and it really does work. And
Right.
but we still don't know several questions. What is the I? I mean, why would an I appear? We went too far now from piano. Let's just stay with that. What you have said is wonderful, and if that could be implemented in music schools, that would be super.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not very difficult. I mean, not very difficult.
You have to know when it is missing, and then you do something maybe to bring awareness. Some people have it, some people don't have it, some people have it a little bit. They're not sure about themselves. Also, a lot of it, people are indoctrinated by teachers, and they tend to emulate them and copy them and play from the teacher's viewpoint, or if not so, against the teacher's viewpoint. But it's not coming from the source. Okay, at certain time, someone has to let go of all the teaching, not forgetting, but starting each time, like you start practicing the scale every time from the first time. You know, you start to think about music originally from the present moment and make a new connection with it.
There was one girl from Germany, and she was very much afraid. It was a big, major concert, and her mother called me to calm her down. I said, "No, what am I going to do?" So I asked her that if she was ready, and she said yes, she was ready and all that. And I said, "Okay, great. What would you do when you go on stage and they introduce you and you're ready to go in? You walk out and there is no piano. They didn't bring the piano. What will you do with the evening? Will you cancel, or what would you do?" And there was a big silence, because if she would cancel, that means she was not ready. Because really, this is I'm getting now to the piano, is really a rocket to bring you somewhere. So when someone is ready, that means they don't have to go anywhere anymore, but they can invite everybody else to get on and fly. But even I would go a little further, and I did with her, and she calmed down right away. And I said that, why wouldn't you consider just sit down in front of them, and not John Cage type of thing, but really just explore inside you your feelings, your thoughts from their being, from that part, and go through how your thoughts feel. What have you discovered? Just go through all that, and that's the concert. And the body can follow these sentiments, but people will get what you are going through, not what your body is. So that was like instant. She calmed down and she understood. That's very, very
You changed
powerful.
your point of view, and that helped her.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that people who are traumatized during their life, let's say they had a failed concert, they were humiliated on stage, they forgot, or something happened that made them feel ashamed about performance, and that image is staying with them. And that image can key in to the lock, like while they're going on stage. Not always, but for some people it becomes a major problem, and sometimes they stop playing. Okay, and so the challenge from my point of view is how to erase it. It's like pulling a splinter from your foot so that you can run. Okay, there's a splinter there. If the person is afraid or anxious or panicking, there's a tremendous charge behind it, phenomenal amount of charge. And they cannot always control it. Some people can suppress it, control it, and play well while they're anxious, okay? But it can destroy career. Yasha Heifetz once made a mistake in one of the concerti. He never played it again, because that was his protection from that moment.
Yeah.
And I know a pianist that is one of the best there is, who played Ravel, and he approached a certain point, and he was in a concert in Italy, and whatever, and he said that suddenly he snapped out of, as if he woke up in the middle of the phrase, okay? Now, that kind of changes in consciousness happen. I immediately asked him, were you hungry? Were you tired? Yes, I was jet-lagged, and I just flew last night. I said, okay. So in the middle of concert, he goes through this kind of, like, maybe he was kind of falling asleep and waking up or something. That became such a splinter, and he was afraid to play. So each time he was approaching that, he was rushing through. That was his way of dealing with that, and okay. So there is a charge about that moment. So I bring him back to the charge of the moment in that concert. See the picture of you racing, and then explode that image. See it again, explode it, okay? And he did it several times, and then the charge of that image went away, never came back. So, and he had negative thoughts about his playing before. He did like to play that piece, okay? So it's very important to handle all the fixation of negative experiences. I had a friend a long time ago who studied with a good teacher, Claude Frank, okay? Beethoven Sonata. And when he reached certain notes, he hear a scream of the teacher, whoa, something like that. And he says, each time I play that sonata, I hear the scream. He's stuck with that scream, you know? So we have to be very careful with students, because there are certain things that can affect them, that can interfere with their career, musicianship, everything. Okay, so that is a side that I am dealing with every day. How to erase the trauma. Now, you did not assume that that girl had a trauma. Why should you assume it? But apparently she had the memory of something, or something entered into her mind. And the question is, can you find it, and can you erase it fast and release it? There's a way to do it, yeah.
So, you know, my approach to all this is I'm approaching life, and why am I, you know, what am I doing here? I do this all the time, and so and that's many decades, so it's a long time. So when situation like this happens, unless I have a very simple foundation, very simple, which is unquestionable, and that's why silence is very significant, because it's a very powerful phenomenon that we all could agree in, that we all experience it, but that is a quality that is not changing. So that means I'm not changing, and I feel very good. And if somebody comes and goes like this, from this point of view, it's very easy to identify and say the right things for the sake that they calm down. Not so much whether it just calm down.
Yes.
And then the other, you know, because to understand the significance of the I, it is very important to understand what is before the I, because whatever is before the I, that gives meaning to the I and to everything that is, and that is unmoving, and it could be understood from the point of I, because the I itself is a door. You cannot, when you say the word I, you cannot define it. You point to it, but by pointing to it, one gets lost in what's prior to, which is no limitations. So anyway, that is really, and so if this is, so if I'm approaching my life from that point of view, and I'm a piano, and I am working with musicians, and I'm a piano guy, and so it is very, very important for me to create, use science and create an instrument that takes you to the moon. Because most of the time people believe they are heading on the moon and they go around the earth because the piano cannot fly.
Yeah.
So, and I'm saying it very much from engineering point of view, not sentimental whatsoever. So there are very specific requirements in an instrument that will create qualities that will give you a goosebump. And it's very, very scientific. And even goosebump is scientific. So, why do I care? One, because the eye, or prior to the eye, is perfect, a quality of perfection. It has no name, but it comes with wanting to, you know, if it comes to on whatever level, one wants to do good. You know, that it's quality. And then if it's science, you want to do good by knowing more and so forth, and applying that knowledge. So for me, it's very important that from engineering point of view, we create, you know, we rebuild the piano potentially, but for a human being, for somebody who is longing, and so, and it's not even our credit because this was already figured out by 1880. So, but we make sure that we redo those instruments to the level that there are human emotions and all that. And so I'm not going to go into the technical details of it. But to me, it's very important that whomever I meet, a pianist, that I find them, we meet somewhere, and then either automatically some of my experience is shared because we talk about music, sound and silence, so we have the same profession, you know, that kind. And then also the other is when, because every person is so different, their expectation, their physical and mental capacities, so to understand them and craft the instrument in collaboration with the person. So, and that led us to the point, this dedication for 40 years now, that I think Fagioli calls us their ambassador, which is quite a big deal on the East Coast. And you know, we have the reputation we have everywhere. But I don't think about it because I care more about whether I made somebody happy or not. That's my life. Like my teacher said, serve humanity. And we have been doing that. But how can I serve humanity? I become the best in my profession to serve humanity, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So, and that had been the guiding principle of Klavierhaus, to the point that I have many innovative ideas based on, you know, because the piano was not really finished. And I have innovative ideas, but I don't think I will have the time to engage. But definitely would enhance the seeking of a pianist. I look at them as seeker. I'm a seeker. I look at pianists as seekers. And so, and I try to talk to everybody or relate like a seeker. And so that's why Klavierhaus is something, the door is always open. We always, you know, want to do great things, but very much so that I know when I mentioned that music could do so much more for humanity, it is made from cosmic materials. You know, it was here at the beginning of everything. That's cosmic, not a tiny human being like us. You know, we take it granted that we have this, we know, we hear, we do, and that's a big mistake because I think I would teach a child to value that we can hear. You know, a deaf person, should be a teacher of what is sound and so forth.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
Just in association, there are some pianists who choose one piano, and it is their piano, and they only play on this piano. Horowitz, Zimmerman,
Yeah.
they travel with the piano, they only speak through that instrument.
Yep.
There are some other people, musicians, who can play on any instrument. I would say that Liszt didn't care. He will play on the most dinky piano and produce the Liszt music. He will break those instruments, but he doesn't care. He's going to do his thing on any piano.
But he put pressure on every piano maker to build a piano break.
Right.
No.
I understand.
And that's why that's why we have a very strong technological evolution because of him mostly, but other pianists. Today, when the piano is like sleeping like this for 100 years, that's our, right. Imagine you have something like this that was researched for 200 years, right? It's a treasure for humanity. So the knowledge is there, what makes it beautiful and human. And so all everybody should have done is copy the blueprint, because it's, you know, tension, length, diameter, you can have some nuance, but if this is not done, then you go away from the research and you go, you know, 30, 40, 100 years back. And so all of a sudden, piano for everybody kind of thing. And then let's just say a Stradivarius, who would check the piano. I mean, I'm sorry, we don't have a Stradivarius in world piano makers in that sense. But he cared for his instrument, you know, to the point that when he didn't like it, he took it apart, scraped it more, and like that. And when he was touched, then he said, it's a Stradivarius. So it's the same with the piano. Also, there has to be somebody who understands physics, engineering, acoustics, psychology, and a whole bunch of stuff. He's a human being on that side. Anatomy. Yeah. There's many things. And that should have been taught in school for one person. The one person is a master, who is a master in all these fields, and then goes on stage and understand the psychological pressure and worry and the acoustics, and bring the piano together to the evening.
But still, there are people like a very hard piano to play on. Some people like very soft one that hardly touch, and it gives sense.
But we don't have doctor here, but this is fixed, you know, the anatomy is the same for everybody. So when we do the keys, for example, it's 50 gram down and 28, 29 grams speed up for everybody, child, girl, ladies, and man. It's because made for the human body.
Yes.
Finished. So now it's all over the place, and then because already your teacher and their teacher already played on garbage, they were forced to come up with the idea of adopting. When you adopt, you get injuries, you give up, and then but there are hospitals treating this, and the doctors don't know how you developed it. So preference is what you know. I mean, imagine I have this. I mean, I'm facing this every day. Oh, I don't like it. You know, we spend so much time to refine it and make it gentle by the book. Now, somebody comes who had a bad piano, and then they learn to play on that, and they try to get that out. They can't control this because it just works. And so to correct this, that who likes what, it's from all the memory, the habits, because of the hundreds of thousands of really pianos that should not have been out, but people are learned to adopt, and so it's pretty simple. The principles, what the requirements, what this should do. I mean, in a high treble here, when you pluck, it's 12 seconds sustain. I mean, you take the clock, 5, take it apart. Now you know who takes that apart? Nobody, because nobody knows what I said now. But a pianist would know what it means to and then you play, you know.
Yes, yes.
Or you have to play again. They know.
So, but still, Fagioli came with a new piano,
Yeah.
and they made some claim that they have some uniqueness about the
They do.
piano. So, what makes it it unique or different?
Very good. You know, if you could say the piano was, let's say, 1700, the first forte piano,
Yeah.
and then next 180 years, by 1882, they declared first modern piano, which is the same like today, this time. Everybody in the world, they went in the direction what Steinway had concluded, but everybody,
Yes.
but this works. This works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that works. And then so 1700, and there is an aspiration to improve a forte piano, make it bigger and longer,
Mm-hmm.
stronger. And then it has a limitation, you know? I mean, at some point you cannot do anything anymore.
Right.
Because of its principles. But all the time they had 500 people in their mind. The engineers had, you know?
500
Okay,
people in the audience.
Yeah. So you make a machine with the decibel and all the nuances for 500 people. I said, we did it. 1882. 1891, Carnegie Hall opened. What's in Carnegie Hall today?
This time?
Yeah, maybe I'm not saying, I'm going to say this, but maybe
What?
I'll say it.
What is that?
Well, a piano made for 500 people. Nobody, you know, the engineers should have said, oh, wait a minute, we did it for this room because of the lyrical qualities, the dynamic, the feedback and all that. We were very careful doing this. Maybe we should design something. I mean, it's like 6 times bigger and the sound is not coming back.
The auditorium is an instrument, and Carnegie Hall has many problems. There are places in the orchestra.
We shouldn't go
No, you hear double sound. It comes from here and then from there.
No, it's
you
too
know?
big.
In one place, I know where not to sit, you know.
But I worked on the stage, and poor pianist with an orchestra, you know, when it's a solo night, it's okay, the pianist is under that chair. That's how it was built, you know, above. Goes like this. It's right under.
I didn't fully understand.
If it's a solo night, pianist is back in the middle of the stage,
Yes.
but above it there is this projector kind of thing, and also feedback from the wall.
Yeah.
But when there's an orchestra, you have 1 million people, very far from the wall, which would be the feedback, and you are pushed out, and if you look up, you don't see the ceiling of it.
Right.
So you know when that will come back to you, the sound. I mean, I worked on the stage, and I had somebody 5-8 meters from me. I didn't hear what he was saying. That was shocking. So, so poor pianists, they really have to be experienced in trusting their technique, because the idea of feedback, it's impossible. There's no feedback. And then you have this big orchestra behind you, and they are all soloists anyway. And the orchestra is the soloist, and there's a big battle between the two.
Yes.
And so enjoy it. And the piano is like a mouse. Right. And then the verses, people stand up and applaud. And anyway.
Well,
so
I have to say that Klavierhaus pianos are far from mice. They're really amazing to play on. But yes,
Thank you.
I have definitely played mice. I actually play a lot of mice, lemony mice, in my career. I know we have some questions in the audience.
Wow.
Would you be willing to take a
Yes,
couple of
please.
questions?
Please.
Okay, here we go. So, Alok, here you go.
Hello.
Hi.
First of all, on behalf of the Society, I've been a member for many years. I want to thank you both. It's such a fascinating and a discussion, and both of you two in particular, in our interactions with you. Like Natasha's introduced you to us in different contexts. Now, we've been, you touched upon so many points that we've experienced firsthand. So one of them is that most of us started doing this because we want to play.
Right.
And it's an external, extroverted activity. and we struggle with it. We have memory slips. I asked my colleagues, you played so beautifully, you look so calm. And they say, I was absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
And they said, you look calm. I said, I was terrified. So we have this, after a while, you do this for a while, and then you realize it's not about the music. It's about, we end up working on ourselves. Now, you both approach it from such different direction. Like from Sujatri, I think both of you touched on such deep philosophical themes.
Yes.
And that's why, like, the music is just, it's a way to look within, right? So with Sujatri, one of the takeaways was the importance of the silence as the foundation of everything, which of all our experiences, and even the way we approach, the way you approach the instrument, the sound. Like if there's noise, you won't hear the purity, right? From Dr. Kuhn, I remember the session you did with us. It's life-changing. Because, for a couple of reasons. One is, I thought about it myself, and I saw the people in the room. You touched upon this, first of all, the importance of the source, which you mentioned, the I, and then all these false identities. See, the problem that we have on stage is this constant chatter or previous memories or like low-grade traumas and all that. Now, Sujatri, you were saying that you were fortunate that you were born with a still mind, right? Or you say that you have that perception.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kuhn, in extreme cases, there's a lot of clinical work that needs to be done, right? But then the rest of us, we're kind of working on ourselves. So there's this thing. What we find, Natasha does this all the time, right? So she makes it look so easy. With us, we practice, we put in so much effort, we work like mad. Then someday, maybe we reach a point where we trust our physical, and then the mind goes still. So what I wanted to ask both of you from your own perspective is, what's the importance of, we all have a choice of what we do, choice of action, effort. How would you advise us on actions we can, either you say, well, you can't put in any effort, you just have to let it happen. Or you say there is work that can be done, or seeking help, or internal work. So what's the role of practice?
Can you be more specific, or give me an example?
You were talking about the true I, and all the false identities.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
there's some work that can be done.
Well, identity, I don't say false. They are negative. Because they have charge, and the charge make them hypnotic. They can hypnotize you. They can put force on you and lead you from your own being. Okay, if they are turned on. Okay, so certain memory or perception can trigger and wake up certain reaction. That comes really not from you, it comes from a circuit. It's an identity, and like the fearful me, the shy me, the worried me, etc. All kind of words that are attached to those concepts. And there's a way to, I call it banalize it, trivialize it, by erasing the charge that is locked in that memory, and you just have to name it and say, I erase it. And so, again, the I erase it. The I. So when you say I erase it, you have to be exterior to it, not locked into it. Now, it's not the shy me, or the sad me, or the depressed me, or the failed me, which is a negative identity. The I is looking at them from the outside, and then it the I can dissolve it. Psychology does not deal with the I. Therefore, certain conditions like PTSD cannot be resolved with psychotherapy and medications, because here we are dealing with such a heavy charge that you have to bring about the I, which is viewpoint in space, which is a free operating consciousness of the individual, okay? And you have to define it, then you know what it is, and then and you can operate from that point of view. Okay, you basically release your point of view that it's not pinned down and it's not controlled by another identity. Your viewpoint has to be very free, and you can change your viewpoint as you move along. You know, and you're free to dream and to create images of the music that you want to create. You know, and so you see some people who are frozen as they're playing and scared or tensed, and you see that in the sitting, etc. You see people who are giving this inspiration to lead them, and they're quite relaxed or free to express. Let's say a dancer is not dancing relaxedly. There's a lot of activity, but there's no tension of fear. There's a statement of creation, right? So the force is genuine because it comes from the I and not from a negative source.
Yeah.
So basically we have to define the interference, give it a name, and then we can do something to eliminate it. So definition.
And that
Okay.
you're saying that
Name it and then
so naming
erase
it
it.
detaches you from it. And then
What?
When you name it, you're able to detach from it, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
I
you
would
very
like
much.
to
So
say
yes,
something
I
because,
wanted to ask from your perspective.
You know, the real question, the big question is, what is life and how can we be happy? Simple, very simple. So, when you look at a child, right, just was made. Nobody touched, nobody influenced. They are delightful, happy, creative, you know. And then when we introduce our idea of life, we mess them up and we create people that have questions. And so after so many generations of really misunderstanding, what is this? And it might have come from the idea that the survival of this physical form in the jungle was very important. So we put all the emphasis in the other direction in survival. So what you see today in the world, it's a very sophisticated survival system. But it has no brain. It just was supposed to take care of this so that I can sit down and smile. No, but now we created so many things and it requires so many upkeeping. We are the last. And that's why I'm getting to that, but first there has to be a simplicity that is evident, self-evident for everybody. Because I can have ideas and you don't understand and you disapprove, then we don't really have anything going. So that's why I mentioned silence, and that's why silence is so significant, because everybody knows what that is. And it's a quality that we should consciously utilize, which is just being aware. When you are aware in silence, and I put a pause on this, the nature of the mind is to be active. That's its nature. So if you want to, don't do that and I meditate, that's how it doesn't work. It's like a baby and its nature is like this, and you poke it and you make it like this. So you need to be, like I mentioned to you, when you are an adult and the kindergarten kid kicking your knee, you go like this, because you are so much bigger, it's such a big world, and it will take 20, 30 years and then the kid will be fine. So we, in our evolution, we are like little kids kicking each other. We don't have an environment that we can claim as ours and be big and then go back to the problem, go back to the mind, and then you will see in the big thing of everything, where everything can happen, everything has a place, and the mind is doing this. It's okay, the mind can do that. There is place for it. You have to understand, right now it is, what is it called? Agitated. It's impossible to calm it down. And also the tools with the alcohol and meditation, all these it's too late now for that. So that's why we have to claim our space, silence, infinite, the quality of infinite which we have. We just put more attention in the little one, the limited ones, but it doesn't pay. It's confusing and it's harmful and all that stuff. So that the invitation here is to become consciously aware of the silence before any sound wave appears. How difficult is that? But the attention, you have to, and we don't, it is inherent. It's not that you go to meditate and then you achieve silence. No, you don't. It is inherent, and so if it's inherent,
It's always there.
allow that to be. And the mind nature in the duality is to be active. Allow it to be. When you allow the mind to be, it will run out of energy. You fuel it. You have so much energy from cosmos. We are made, but you upkeep them by wanting or not wanting and making a plan. And this thing is like this. But the amazing thing is that when you don't bother it, it becomes like the lake, and then it will reflect the universe.
But going back to Alok's point, I think that from my experience as a performer, when you are alone and the environment is comfortable and it's just you, and you play, right? You play at home and you feel, it's just, I'm fine. And then you get in front of people and you think, oh my goodness, no, this can't be done. And suddenly your mind shuts off. But I always tell my students, it's because you didn't practice your mind. You practiced your hands.
It's only if you practiced enough that you can get to that.
Yeah.
Right.
So often when we practice, we go through the mechanics of producing sound, but we don't actually let our mind lead the sound and lead our vision for the piece. So often I do this personally, and I ask my students to do this. It's very difficult. It's actually really great for insomnia. But if you try to take the piece of music that you learned and that you think you've memorized and internalized, and you try to play it, quote unquote, completely away from the instrument, you'll find that actually you don't know it that well. After years and years and years of playing it, you don't know it that well. And this is the only thing that will save you in a moment of something. Sometimes you're on stage and your finger slips up. And if you've only been relying on your hands and the mechanics and your finger memory, you're in big, big, big trouble, because your mind can't lead you to the next. I call them like structures. Like you have these structural poles here at Klavierhaus. The structures have to be there, and those structures are in your mind. They're not here because your hands have failed you. So you have to bring your hands back with the mind.
It's also the depth of education, because pianists in the 19th century, they were composers.
Yes.
They could compose a new harmony, they knew counterpoint, and the knowledge was different. Today people learn to perform and memorize. It's not sufficient, and I think that they feel therefore insecure.
Well, that's why I used to make fun of Schenkerian analysis, and now I quote it all the time, because I actually find that this kind of analysis is hyper important in a piece. So I always say, okay, where are you? What key are you in? And if you can't tell me what key you're in and where you're modulating, then you can't get yourself out of there.
Right.
Yeah, because if you can understand, especially as a pianist, because we play so many harmonies,
Yes.
contrary to one-line instruments, we actually have the ability to save ourselves by playing oblong chords in the harmony in which we're in, and
Yes.
kind of just wrap our head around where we're going next. But if you have no idea that you're in E flat major, well, no one can help you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it's-
Right.
yeah, exactly. So Dr. Len Horowitz has a question, and he joined in a little bit later, and I know you already addressed this, but maybe you can address it for him. He says, in trauma, no, he's an internist.
Yes.
You met him.
Yes.
Yes. In trauma, often the symptom is a physical sensation that is a fragment of trauma. How do you get at that?
How do you get at that?
So, in trauma, often the symptom is a physical sensation that is a fragment of the trauma. And how do you get away from the physical sensation of the trauma?
Well, it's only a symptom. The question is, I don't treat necessarily the symptom. I treat the template of the trauma, which is the experience of the trauma. And what I look for is the mental image of the trauma and discharging the mental image. And then when you discharge it, it will not come back again and the symptom will disappear. So I don't treat the symptoms. I treat the recording of the trauma, and let's say that there were more than one traumas. Child abuse or rape. A person has been raped 3 times, 4 times. Okay? So we have to erase the first one to allow the others to be erased. We can do a composite of all rapes into one image. The mind can do tremendous creative things. Okay? Combine all those trauma to a overall image or incident that you have, or construct, I call it, okay? And then you explore that image, you recreate it, you explode it, recreate it, or you burn it, or you do something by commands. It's a mental activity, but I use physical terms. To erase, to dissolve, to uncreate, to explode, and that's how I addressed them, as if they were physical, because in a way they are physical. It is energy, okay? And when you reduce the energy, you trivialize the whole subject and the symptom disappears. They only exist when there is an image. Okay, when you have an image of a trauma, it means that there is charge. When you discharge the image, or the charge, the image disappears. You cannot find the picture. Now, you remember what happened. You know that there was a rape here and rape there, and you know the incident, you know when it happened. The regular memory is there. The memory of a trauma is separate memory. It is a mental charge construct, okay, that can hit you like that, like it can hit you suddenly, and it comes from nowhere. I don't think that this is a brain phenomena only. The brain records it and etc. But there's also energy that is really, that's my, it's not belief. I deal with that. I find that the person is really engulfed by a trauma, and the trauma can move in and out. That's why sometimes you don't feel traumatized because the trauma moved away, but the trauma can come back at you. So it's almost modular like that, right? And you can call the trauma, you can summon the trauma. When I say recall the time that this and that happened to you, suddenly he has a picture. So a person can summon the charge. And then I said, okay, look at it, now explore the image. You know? And it can be a very creative process, like the lady that I told you about who was had a mother, husband, and lover that were abusive, physically and mentally, okay? I said, see the 3 of them and explore them, boom, okay? And she loved it. She felt such a joy of suddenly release. Now I said, see you with each one of them, different you with each one of them, and explore the three couples. Boom, okay. Recreate, explode. That's how I deal with the source of the trauma. The symptoms are just washed off. I call it banalization or trivialization of the traumatic memory. So I don't treat the symptoms.
But what if the trauma is fragmented? What if it's not quite there? And this is a question also from Dr. Horowitz, but my follow-up question is, this is taking a different turn now, sorry. But do you believe that one could have experienced trauma and then completely erased it out of their mind for it only to have come back many, many years later?
It's not erased, it's suppressed.
Suppressed, so...
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
The PTSD,
but like fragments
PTSD is a mechanism that protects the individual from life dangers. And if there was a danger that he was attacked, assaulted, he doesn't forget it, right? Why? Because this is a learning mechanism of animals. It is the reptile brain that manages that, okay? We have a reptile level of functioning, which is a brainstem, okay? And it reacts in a 1/10 of a second. The precortex is reacting intellectually to the subject, but it takes 1/3 of a second, 3 times slower. So the reptile, I call it, the limbic system, is much faster to respond. And also it meant not to be erased. So if someone had a trauma, it's not meant to be erased. But I found a way to erase it. That's the unique thing. I find that, I assume that if you can fixate it, you can unfix it. How do you do that, okay? And I was in a war situation, and I had a guy who was shell-shocked, brought to the hospital. I asked him, where are you? He said, and he was very introverted. He said, I'm near the bridge. What do you see? I see shells. Okay, repeat. What do you see? Shells. Shells. I asked him to repeat until he repeated until suddenly he said shells, 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 shells. And he opened his eyes and he asked me, where am I? I learned from that the whole technique, from that incident.
That's great.
You know, that he was not here, he was there. Why? He was dissociated into an experience of trauma, okay? And that's how he came to me. And I learned immediately because I decided, you know what I decided? Put aside Freud and psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. No transference, no interpretation. I just listened to the text. The text gave me the answer. You listen to people exactly for what they say. You don't try to interpret it and to tell, oh, what you mean is this. No, you mean that, okay? Because this is destructive. You are interfering. In fact, when you change the name of a trauma, so you cannot find it. It has a name, it has words that were in that experience. He said shells, I cannot come and say the rockets or something. Those are his words, you know? And so I learned everything from this as my starting point, you know? But it gave me a lot, you know? So that was my example to say that you have to find what is the construct of trauma that was created at a certain moment. You go to that moment. You have to use the words that occurred at that time. You don't replace them with your words, okay? And when you erase it, the person is free. It's like you pull a splinter out of his foot. I hope that I answered the question.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that was good.
Yes.
Yeah?
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank
That
you.
was very nice.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this amazing, soul-stirring discussion. It was absolutely fabulous. I am not a musician. I have a psychology background, and I'm trained to be a psychotherapist. And I have a very keen fascination for Eastern philosophy. I love your concept of silence and how you spoke about it. And my biggest takeaway today from this amazing discussion was just the whole idea of this deep sense of inner knowing, of going into your source, as you mentioned, you know. And like you said about listening to other people, I think that same listening, when you compassionately listen to yourself, and you go to that source, it is so centering, it is so grounding that you automatically, in that silence of going within, you shed off all those layers you were speaking about. You know, the concepts you take on from the world as you grow.
Yeah.
And like our natural form of being, our essence is silence, is space. And then we, you know, fill it up and we start doing so much. But then you spoke about that whole concept of being. And then I thought, you know, we are human beings. We're
Yeah.
not human doings. So, you know, I
Yeah.
found that very fascinating how,
Yeah.
you know, and when you spoke of how, about music, you know, how, you know, music starts and originates from silence and then it goes back into silence.
Yeah.
I just absolutely loved that.
Yeah,
And in the same way, you know, how we originate from our source and that personal charge which we have, that energy, but then that kind of gets transformed with all the masks that you wear and all the labels that you put on your body, that you get so lost and confused as to
Right.
who you are. So my question is, you know, like both of you, like I have different questions. Like I love your work, you know, I'm going to read up on what you've done, and it is just so fascinating, like the way you talk about it, because coming from a psychology background, I can resonate, and I think very few people in this space speak of
Yeah.
the concepts like you do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
a great sense of spirituality embedded in your work.
Yes.
Encounter these
Yes.
situations yourself.
But
Yeah, and I deal
But
with
it's
trauma.
also down to us practical.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah. It's so simple, your approach, you
Yes,
know.
yeah.
And I deal with a lot of, you know, clients and patients who go through similar things. And there's so much learning that I've had in the last hour that, you know, there is so much to take home. So my question to you in particular is, when did you realize you wanted to be a psychiatrist and work with people? And what is it that made you do that? What was your seeking, your drive to give back to humanity in the way that you do?
Well,
I'm just going to ask the other question also. And my question to you,
Yeah, it's Otto, sorry.
just
Alright.
yeah, is I love your work with silence, and you know, you said you are not a musician, but you love silence. So, what made you choose the piano in particular? Like you had a choice of working with anything, but you said it was your friend, but it could have been any instrument. So, what is it about the piano that you find fascinating, and what made you choose the piano to work with serving society and humanity? Thank you.
You want me to answer
Yes.
something?
Yeah.
Well, to give one's biography, that's a long story, but let's try to make some simple point, okay? I grew up in a musical family. My aunt was a cellist, my mother played the piano, my grandmother played the piano. They rehearsed chamber music, and that was my musical life, okay? I grew into that. Then it's interesting, you have certain traumas in your life, losses, and they become a very powerful motivation. My aunt got sick and went to London for surgery and moved back from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. I didn't see her. Okay, we moved to Tel Aviv after that. It was not the same, but she was very close to me. And the cello, it was, I had a very strong connection to the cello, and I became a cellist. But my mother used to practice, and she gave up the piano. she was depressed or something. We moved to Tel Aviv. She sold the piano. And that was a trauma for me. How dare she sell the piano? I used to go and visit the piano 2 blocks away. As a kid, I was 6, something like that. And then I insisted that she get a piano. They got a piano. And now she doesn't practice, so I take all her music and I start to read the music. And I taught myself, I'm playing, I'm reading, and my grandmother had scores of Beethoven symphonies for 4 hands, and I read this, and then I read here, and I put it together. That's what I was doing, reading, and I'm playing Bach suites and Mozart sonata, and then I go to Brahms, the Handel variation, and I try to get it. I try to get the sound, and then I try to get the sound of Chopin, and I'm not a pianist. But I really forced myself into get into the soul of the piano sound production. I was very fascinated by what did they hear and how did they come to that effect. For me, that was the attraction for the piano. Now, what's your question about how I became a psychiatrist? I went to medical school at the time that I finished high school, and I decided to go to medical school and not to go first to the army. I will serve later on as a doctor. I did not want to run on the hill with a gun and shoot and all that stuff. I'll be a doctor, that's nicer for me. But actually, my interest in medicine was leading me to psychiatry. Why? Because I had the music world, I was interested in some academic issues that are beyond philosophy, and mainly history, philosophy. And so my interests were much wider than the medicine as a technical tools that you study, like the mechanics of the body, etc. Yeah, I did everything, but I was interested actually in the mind, and I was applying to medical school, and I wrote something about the connection between thoughts and matter. That was my secret wish to untangle the connection between the mind and the body, thought and matter, etc. And this is a puzzle even today. And but that was what drew me to psychiatry. And I went through psychoanalysis as I was a medical student, and I had some reservation about the discipline at that time, that it's open-ended, that it is interpretative, that it's not precise, etc., etc. I went to the army now. That was real for me. War. There was a war. I was on the Suez Canal, attrition war.
Wow.
And that was very real to me. It was the best time of my life in a way, because I helped saving casualties and etc., running a group. It was a tank force, and it was very natural for me. I wrote my dissertation on bone cancer. Why not? Okay, I presented that, but truly, my mind was going to psychiatry, and I wanted to both directions. I thought there's a sacrifice in dealing with death in cancer, and I said I was willing to deal with that. Okay. There was something beyond the illness, dealing with death, okay, and the loss, okay. But then I wanted to go further to the mind, because that was challenging to me. I wanted to find a better understanding of the mind, and I think that I did something, you know. Okay.
the piano was really a gift from life to me. Not so much I looked for it, but without the piano, I would not have been able to understand silence. As an opposite. But it took me 20 years. I was always like, okay. And then I did my meditation. And then it's like, what am I doing? How the two are together. And it came to a point which is very profound. And I have an answer in Hungarian. So we have one word in Hungarian that describes the physical phenomenon of the relationship of silence and sound. One word. So I will say it in English, 3 activities. And then I say it in Hungarian. So the piano is sounding, and the piano sound decays, and there is peace in the room, silence in the room. So in Hungarian, the piano csendül, then the piano csendül, and then csendül in the room. And it's one word. It describes exactly the physical phenomenon, the relationship of the two, in which the chant means silence. So in all these sound activities you have not a word about sound. It says if the modulated silence is sound. Mm-hmm. In one, but with one word, and also csendül meaning sitting. That means if you take the 2 words apart, that means that when this physical mechanism takes place, when all this is done, then silence sits here. Oh, I have a microphone. So that was an amazing. I was heading to the Liszt Academy, and I told my wife that I said I cannot talk to the kids for 2 hours to clarify, agendas and stuff. I need one word. And she said, "You mean csendül?" It's like, whoa. While she was cooking, I've been working on it for 20 years or so, and she was, "You mean csendül?" And then that is really that one word. With that one word, I finished my search for silence and understand the relationship of sound, and also, there are. If I approach it like very simple question, and we're not going to get into this, but there are so many revealing questions to the mind that the mind will go, whoa, and so we misunderstood it, and therefore we are on the wrong track. So I've been calling my pianos csendülő piano, and the reason, their nature. Have you heard any of the pianos playing right now? No, that's their nature. So who's making them play? So they are called pianoforte, but they are not pianoforte. Pianists make them pianoforte, but who wins at the end? The pianist gets exhausted, content, happy, and the piano. I know you will come in my street, and then everybody. It was a great concert. So they are playing silence. They are giving humanity the pathway to silence, and there are many other. And it's not poetry. It's a physical phenomenon. And in the ancient time, they knew this, that they didn't waste. They described how out of silence this comes and that comes, and then using one word. So there is so much. I think if the difficulty, I can imagine Einstein talking to physicists and all that stuff, And then he was like, like totally, and coming up with discoveries. But he was a violinist inside. So I'm a guy who is possessed with this, and there's not much I can say. I mean, it's literally the first time I'm doing this, but there is so much to say, and so beautiful. The world or creation or whatever this is, it is so absolutely beautiful, and I was brought to this, and I'm kind of utilizing my words through piano, pianist sound, and all that stuff, and to bring it to be able to not to lose the other person, because if we talk about existence and is there a God, there are other dimensions, like totally not. You can measure sound wave, you can know, and then the relationship of the two, one can understand the whole universe, the creation, existence, prior to existence. Oh, this is so self-evident. But and we don't need somebody telling us, because if something is self-evident, there's nothing one can say. They can ruin it. So if it is self-evident, then so we have to identify all the things that are in the way, and including trauma and including other. But why are you playing? And what is happiness? So many. They needs to be identified. I usually ask people, what is music? And there is no answer for it. And how is it you go to a music school and you cannot tell me what music is?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Sophie has a question.
Please.
Yes, and then Neil.
Yes. All right.
Hi. I'm very fortunate and happy to be here. I actually moved to New York 3 months ago from Canada.
Oh, wow.
I just graduated last year and I changed my job basically. And back in Canada, back home, there's a lot more space. So what I realized after 3 months of being in New York is I often told my friends, even last week, I said to them, I don't have space in where I'm living right now, and that lack of space is causing me to being unable to sort of think, and I sort of need that sort of resonance. And it's harder for me to play piano on a keyboard, now in my little studio. So definitely resonate a lot with your concept of sort of silence and space. So I guess just to elaborate a little bit more on the concept of I. So doctor, that you mentioned, you had a client that after sort of a session of an epiphany, she realized she found herself. She found who she is.
She's what?
She found herself, found like who she is. So I guess I'm just wondering, is there a subsequent question to that goes aligned, sort of like who I am? And just to going back to your point that there's no concrete definition of I, sort of like there's like a door before the I, but I find that in modern times, modern society, there are a lot of dilemmas, sort of opposites, such as like silence and sound. Even music, the score is black and white, but the delivery is, everyone plays the same music, the same score so differently. So I guess just being, as an individual, being able to cope with living that dilemma can be sometimes difficult. So I think that difficulty leads us to a soul-searching sort of process. But I guess, should there be, and that answer is always changing, but should there be sort of a like a definition of who I am, or because it's always changing and it's always
I didn't say the word who I am because I didn't raise that question. Okay, I talk about the I as a free operating consciousness. Okay, that represent an individual. Okay, so when you say who, the individual. Okay, so it might be a circular statement. The individual is the individual. Okay, who is the individual? Okay, but when I look at you, it's not a material thing. It's not your body. It's not your dress. It's not your even speaking. A part of it is the intention to speak, but there are many things that come into speaking. You have circuitry. You have identities. Okay, but there is one agency in our minds that is aware of being aware. That's the I. It is aware of its own awareness. Okay, and that's the I. Okay, and the circuit, let's say, the failed me, the angry me, or the professor in me, they're all identities, and we are acting them. The husband, the citizen, those are more neutral identities, but there are more negative ones that are doing us more harm, okay? And so we are not the identities. We can reflect on the identities. We can actually, if the identities control us hypnotically, so then we don't operate with self-awareness. Okay, but if you are self-aware, so you are there, and you are even aware that you have some other identities. You don't like the way you spoke to someone yesterday. You said, "Well, that's not really me. I'm not in agreement with what I did." Okay, because that was a different identity, and you apologize for it, or you let it go. You know, I just define it as awareness of being aware and of the process of being. That's the I.
So let me, this is a dilemma of humanity. And there are a handful of people that I know of that have understood this question, handful. Because the answer is inherent. Like, you never think of your liver, whether it functions well or not, because it's inherent, right? So it would take an effort. If I ask you, please concentrate on your liver and then start to feel it, it would be an effort of attention, right? Okay. So now what you are asking for is even more subtle and closer to you. So at least you could put your attention to the liver as an object. Yes? And you can have some ideas. But to the one who is looking, how can you look to the one that is looking? You understand?
I get it.
And so just one sec, because it's a very big dilemma. It's a very simple answer, and even if you logically can figure this out, to do that, at this moment, the one who is asking the question is in the way. And to put this that is so dear to you and had helped you so much, and it came to this, now I want to know who I am. These are great questions. But why should the one who is looking obviously is confused about who you are? So the best it can do, I came this far, I don't understand, but there are not two of you, there is only one. And then so the one, which is a mental concept, all right, bear with me for one more time.
I think we cannot solve the riddle.
No.
Not tonight. You have one more question.
But I need to say just one sentence.
Okay.
The dilemma in the world about this subject, that some of it is approaching it from prior to existence. And the other is walking through existence, trying to go to prior to existence. And the tools that you have are from this side. So it's like, this is what you have to do. And then you are it, you understand?
Hello.
Well, I'd like to preface my question first with thanking both of you gentlemen.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
You're both fascinating and amazing individuals, and I could ask you questions for hours, I imagine, but I won't. So I guess I'll focus on you, Sujatri. The idea of silence. I've always wondered about how to best incorporate it in my piano playing, and the challenges that Alok and Natasha were mentioning about being on stage. And one of the things that I've always found very challenging, I guess, to try to bring it into a real-world situation, is the very strange transition between being a normal person sitting here in this chair. Then if you ask me to get up, excuse me, and play that piano, you know, it's out of context, it'd be absolutely frightening. But even if I had prepared something and I wanted to sit there, the very strange and awkward transition, at least in the idea of the Western art recital, whatever you want to call it, where you change from being a person, you sit down at the instrument, and then there's this very, at least to the audience, it doesn't seem like very much, but is having been on stage, it probably somewhere between 3 and 5 seconds, that short moment of silence before you start playing, is your mental space changes from being a normal person to about to undertake this massive musical act. And that silence is always the most amazing and the most frightening thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Almost in some ways, it's harder to approach that than the piece itself.
Yep.
And I find it very fascinating, the idea of silence, and that silence is probably the hardest silence for me to navigate. There's silences in the piece also where you have to, create a beautiful silence as a moment. Usually in the classical literature, that silence is a relatively short piece of time, and you're already in some kind of meter. You're in some kind of rhythm that allows you to have an idea of that silence, but to approach that silence from absolute nothingness is very, very challenging. So I wonder if you had any thoughts about that.
Yes. When you look at space, is it made from different pieces put together, or is solid? Space. Is it fragmented, or is solid? And there are objects in space. Objects are fragmented, space isn't, no? Is it right? Is that right?
I don't know.
How big is space? Quickly, how big is space?
Ever-expanding.
Infinite, no? Mm-hmm. So you see, you can comprehend infinity. That's quite a big deal. Because if I ask you, can you comprehend infinite, you will say no. Yeah. Right?
Right.
So when you go home, and because now you were online, you debate with you, because you gave me 2 different answers. One, that you actually know what is infinite, and then you said you don't know what is infinite. This is the dilemma that and it's really wouldn't be a problem if we would recognize that we have a quality in us that is made from not matter, and its nature, it has attributes, infinite, eternal, those attributes. They don't have names, but if we look at from the point of sound or music, it will be silence, but it's just another attribute of the same thing. So the same, silence, is it fragment? I mean, music, how can music fragment silence? How can it doesn't have the power to do so. Music can appear in silence the way you place it on. You put the energy and the intent. You understand what I mean? So right now, unfortunately, in the school, we are learned to develop the brain and the mind, and it is collecting information from the tangible world. So we survive. So, but like my hand is unable to comprehend infinity or space. It will say it's a meter. This is 1 meter, this distance. But it's empty space, and the space is infinite. So how can you? And so we ignore this, and because we ignore, we shrink down to 1 meter, 70 or 80 human, not beings, but human creatures. You understand? Not beings. Being is forever. So we are down to, and governed by the mind, which all its information is from the physical world, which is very important, but it cannot make such a decision, that there is no infinite quality in my direct experience of life. Imagine if you, right now, because when you listen to me, you are listening with your inherent silence as a tool. Think of silence as a tool. When you think of the hand, it can touch hard object, right? But it cannot touch silence. I have another tool for sound, which is my inherent silence. And these are just the channels, but we were born with the equipment to identify sound wave, even for survival, to run if it's a lion or enjoy if it's a bird, right? So, but you go like this. When you go like this, imagine if you have noise in there. Forget the mind right now. Just if you would be fooled and you would be dead. So it's total silence. We were born with it, and so now that we started developing the mind and we put energy into the mind, and we love the sound because it's not inherent; it disappears, and you want to hold it, and so this is the dilemma, the problem that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly jump in because
Yep.
we probably should wrap this up. But
Yeah.
quickly, just to answer your question, I think it is one of the toughest things, is to break the silence and then start performing. But my advice to you as a performer is, again, to go back and play the music in your head without the instrument, so that the music is already happening and your hands are merely an extension of your mind. Because often I find, especially when I teach, is that people actually react to what they're hearing themselves produce, and that's a big, huge mistake, because you actually have to be the creator, and so the creation comes from the mind, and your hands are merely an extension. So, and the silence actually just grounds you. It's kind of like, okay, I'm here. What am I playing? Where am I?
Yeah.
I'm here. I am. And then you play, and even if there's an orchestral tutti, you should always ask your conductor to allow you to center yourself so you can hear the orchestral tutti before the orchestral tutti comes, even though you're not creating the orchestral tutti. You know what I mean? So that would be my advice to you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible. We had some viewers on YouTube. It's been wonderful. Thank you all for joining. Some new faces and old friends.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you to Klavierhaus. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Kuhn.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
It was very
and
good.
James Wu back there. He's our master. He's Mr. Oz. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.